finances play a massive part in this, but let's say the peace-loving or the ones that follow Islam in the correct fashion, let's say in Saudi Arabia, they have billions. Why would they not use that to, instead of giving citizenship to a robot?
Yeah, but still.
And now there's a massive platform for us knowing Sophie has Saudi Arabian citizenship.
Yeah. In Saudi Arabia, they have platforms. Their biggest channel in Saudi Arabia is called Al Arabiya. And it's almost, you could say, a liberal channel. It's a liberal channel in the sense that it promotes, you could argue, a Western liberal narrative. So it's ironic in a sense that the biggest channels in the Muslim world are promoting the same things that the Western world itself is promoting. Yeah.
And that's due to the ties of money, oil.
Possibly, it could be, but do you know what? It's due to, I think, a post-colonial reality. Now, Saudi Arabia itself, because you use it as an example, wasn't colonized by the British, but the majority of countries in North Africa, including where I'm originally from, which is Egypt, were colonized by either Britain or France. So that mentality, and obviously the African countries themselves have the after effect of that post-colonial reality, which is why you'll find in a lot of our countries, I'm guessing African or Jamaican or like Caribbean, So, but you're originally African, let's say, that reality has spilled over to seeing things like, Fair and Lovely. Fair and Lovely is a white, something that whitens your skin, basically. So it ranges now, the post-colonial reality ranges from finding beauty aesthetically as being more white to actually being in agreement with everything the white colonial, post-colonial master tells you that is true. And we don't know how much this has encroached us. This has encroached us so much that now every question you ask, I promise you, is going to have a Western colonial, post-colonial slant. And that's to preempt what you're going to say.
I would agree to a degree.
I would agree, because even like before, before you came in, Lynn said that you were praying, and we both said like, why does it have? I think, like you said, how the Western media portrays it
so why,
is that everything
it should be the way the white man says it is.
Right.
Okay, so let's look at, because someone asked on the platform when I put you up. With regards to the Quran,
someone said you're smart, bro.
Thank you. Tell him thank you. So when a smart man finds out, when a smart man recognizes a smart man, that makes him smart. So tell him
that you're smart too,
come back.
Someone actually said that there's certain parts of the Quran as well as the Bible that are dated. So when I raised points surrounding violence, waging a holy war, jihad.
So once again, the post-colonial slant starts. The Western narrative starts. I haven't got a problem with that because it is important to address it.
It's important to talk, as I said to you before, I'm going to be asking questions that people ask me as well. And for myself as well, I'm not practicing Muslim, so I just want to know, when looking at the Quran, how can you see what is metaphorically maybe
the case and what is not metaphorically the case?
There you go.
Okay, chapter 3 verse 7, it tells you exactly that. It says, منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات. So it says that this book has in it verses which are basically ambiguous and other verses which are foundational.
Yeah, but how are you supposed to know?
So basically,
if I'm a Muslim and I'm reading the Quran, how am I supposed to know which ones are ambiguous?
Good question. That is a good question. So the answer to that question is that those verses which speak in a way which can only be interpreted in one way, are the foundational verses. For example, chapter 112, verse 1 to 4. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Say He's Allah, or God, one and only. So we believe in only one God. There's no Muslim that's going to come out and say, no, we believe in two gods or three. As a Christian might say, no, we believe in the Trinity, 3 in 1, 1, 3. We don't have that. We don't have that confusion. So we say, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ is a foundational verse. No one can come about and say, look, hold on, you don't believe in قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, or we have a different interpretation. No one in the history of Islam has ever said that. So that's a foundational verse. That's not a metaphoric verse and cannot be subject to a plethora of different interpretations.
But then I think you're coming from a place of being educated, because there's many people that I feel, whether that be in rural places of the Middle East or even here where they're looking for belonging and they attach themselves to certain groups, how you eloquently explain that, how would they know that? For example, someone's messaged me saying, in the Quran it says, and kill them wherever you find them and turn them out from where they have turned you out.
Okay, that's good. So let me quickly answer both questions.
Okay.
What you've posited in the first instance is called an argument from ignorance. It's a fallacy in logic.
Okay.
So if you don't know something exists, it doesn't mean it's false. So if I say, okay, this person doesn't know it, therefore it must be false, that's called an argument from ignorance. If I say, as was the case, that Neptune doesn't exist because I can't see it, they couldn't see Neptune at one point. Yeah, and they had to kind of find Neptune, the planet, Neptune. They had to track it based on other planets. I say it doesn't exist, therefore it doesn't exist. That's an argument from ignorance. So from a logical perspective, it doesn't carry any weight. People don't understand things; they have to get educated. Like Francis Bacon said, "Knowledge is power." It's not my problem if people are ignorant. But there is an excuse in Islam within that. Within Islam, this was like if someone's ignorant, God will take care of them in accordance with the knowledge that they know.
Yeah, like in Christianity, it says like you will be treated on the basis of what light you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
However, so let's look at, in the most basic way possible, you have young people that are seeing that many of their family members are being killed due to Western bombing, so on and so forth. And then whether it's an ignorant individual that starts a group and says, listen, the Quran justifies us going and killing these people that are killing.
So let's address this because now you've mentioned this right. So let me put this in the simplest way possible. Try and make it as simplified as possible.
Layman's terms, yeah?
Layman's terms. Okay, so the Quran has in it, like you just mentioned, chapter 9, verse 5. What you just mentioned before. Kill them wherever
you know the Quran off by heart?
Kind of. You can say that, right? So you just mentioned chapter 9, verse 5, okay? Yeah. That's a problem because why are you not mentioning chapter 9, verse 1, 2, 3, 4,
Tell
then
me
5,
what they are.
and 6, then 7? Because that's called reading out of context, yeah?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So chapter 9, verses 1 to 4 stipulates that there was some kind of agreement between the Muslims and, at that particular time, the pagan Arabs. They had made an agreement.
What's the pagan Arab?
Pagan Arabs are...
Because how many people that listen...
So at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, there were two camps. There were people that had just newly become Muslim and people that stayed upon the religion of their forefathers and believed in a multiplicity of gods.
Okay.
So they believed in different statue gods that they used to worship. Yeah? So there was an agreement between those two camps. There was an agreement between the Muslims and the pagan Arabs. Now, the first verse of chapter 9, which is called Surah Al-Tawbah in the Quran, says that they have these pagan Arabs have not the agreement has not been taken care of. In other words, they have betrayed the agreement. And then it continues talking about what you should do. It says find them where you kill them where you find them, etc. Talking about in the context of war, because now a war has been issued. Just like in any international relations scene, where you have a treaty that is signed.
Where you can wage war.
Yeah, we're talking about a treaty that is signed from an international relations perspective that now has been broken, and now one party has the right to offend itself. So, offend or defend itself on the offending party.
Yeah.
And here it's in chapter 2, verse 190. It says, وَقَاتِلُوا الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. That fight those people who fight you and don't go across the bounds, because God doesn't like those who go across the bounds.
So does that still relate to today? Fight those people who fight you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It does.
Of course.
So
basically, Islam is not a pacifistic religion. So we're not saying that,
lay down and take rubbish.
Look, the idea of, sorry, but I'm going to put this in the crudest of terms and no offense to any listeners, but the idea of slapping someone in the cheek and giving them the other cheek, we don't have that idea. We have, if someone slaps you in the cheek, you're allowed to slap them back on their cheek.
Okay.
You understand? So if someone attacks me on the road, I'm allowed to fight them.
So then would you say, because a lot of...
But basically it's all defense. So from an international relations perspective, if a country is being attacked, they must fight back. It's not about that they should fight back or they have the option of fighting. They actually have to, in Islam, to fight back. They have to.
Oh, so you're saying that it's okay for them to
defend themselves.
To defend themselves.
Yeah.
So what's happening now with various groups?
Well, so terrorism is basically...
Because you're saying, sorry to interrupt, you said that everything that we think about is from a Western ideology.
Yeah.
However, Z and myself have spoken about this in the past, where on air management, I'm not going to justify.
Yeah.
However, I can understand that if I see continuous bombing to my country, if that means a couple casualties here, I wouldn't see it from the outside as necessarily a bad thing. In a way, the West is asking for it to a degree. But is it justified then?
Yeah, it's not justified, because in the Quran it says...
It's not justified.
Look, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5, verse 32, it says, إِنَّهُ مَنْ قَتَلَ نَفْسٍ, whoever kills one person, بِغَيْرِ نَفْسٍ, for not killing another person, أَوْ فَسَادٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ, or creating corruption in the land, فَكَأَنَّمَا قَتَلَ النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. It's as if they've killed all of humanity. So killing one innocent person, whether they be Muslim or non-Muslim, is killing like the whole of humanity. That's a very famous verse in the Quran. The point being is this.
But you just said defend.
Yeah,
you just said
no,
you can't kill.
Innocent. The difference is this. If a combatant attacks you, that is a combatant, someone who wants to fight you. Whereas if it's a non-combatant, someone who is an innocent person, the Prophet told us you're not allowed to kill categories of people. Of them are the non-combatant, women, children, even monks, priests. You're not allowed to cut down trees.
Alright, so I'm going to ask a very stupid question now. Well, it's not stupid, but it's very...
By the way, this is not something controversial. The only reason, and I'll tell you once again, the only reason why you're asking this question is actually, it's sad enough and funny enough. I'll tell you why it's sad and I'll tell you why it's funny. It's sad because actually the same reason you're asking it is because the same Western colonial person that really, let's say, the Western colonial master came into your parents' country, yeah?
Yeah.
And they did that because they justified cultural superiority. They said, we are culturally superior to your parents.
Yeah.
The African tribal religion and the African tribal systems are inferior systems. And therefore, we have a culture which we need to give to these individuals, which is an important culture.
Okay,
the same reason now it's been moved from the colonial landscape to a post-colonial landscape. We still have the imperial, hegemonic Western USA that is attempting now to go into the Middle East rather than, let's say, Africa as much for colonial economic reasons. So they've had to invent a narrative. This narrative is a narrative of what Samuel Huntington called a clash of civilizations. A civilizational clash between the Muslims and the Western Hemisphere. That narrative now, which has been invented, people are starting to believe in it because they're not critical thinkers. They're not thinking, okay, well, actually, what is special about this verse in the Quran? Because actually, if you look at the Old Testament, Book of Numbers 31:18, it says not only do you kill the enemy, but you take the young girls as slave girls. In the Old Testament, right? Yeah. So in other words, prepubescents, you take them, you enslave them, you rape them, you can rape them. And
Old Testament says that.
Yeah, Old Testament says that, and most of the commentators have said that. Yeah. I have not come across one single commentary that has actually differed from that understanding, that literalistic understanding of the Old Testament. So why don't we talk about that verse? Because that verse is actually more dramatic than any verse in the Quran that you'll find.
No, I've spoken about that, but then when we look at the Old Testament, oftentimes the death of Jesus does away with a lot of the old practices in the Old Testament. So the New Testament.
So Matthew, so it says, Jesus says, "I'm not come to do away with the prophet; I've come to affirm them." What does the word affirm mean? This is a discussion, but the thing is as follows: if Jesus Christ is God. If Jesus Christ is God, because that is the Nicene Creed 325 understanding of Christianity. Yeah. He is the author of the Old Testament because the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are all one. Therefore, those texts in Deuteronomy, like Deuteronomy chapter 21 verse 10, Numbers chapter 31 verse 18, and other verses, which are very, very much, vicious, you could say. Very vicious.
Why don't people talk about
No, these are not only authored by Jesus Christ, but they're sanctioned by him himself because he is God. So if the argument is that this is the Old Testament, what about the New Testament? Yeah. Well, Jesus must have been the author of the Old Testament because he is God.
Yeah, no, the Trinity.
Do you see how that works?
There's a lot of Christians that even argue with regards to the Trinity. But going back to defending your country, you're saying that in terms of you can defend yourself if they're the combatant. But my thing is, how the Western world is set up in invading many countries, how would you then defend your country? Because you're not going to go to, if, Trump sits down with Theresa May or Macron.
I'm talking about inhabitants of that land. So, for example, if there's...
How do you defend Palestine or Syria?
Right, if you live in those countries and people come into those countries trying to attack you and take your sovereignty away as an independent, autonomous human being, you'd do the same thing as the Kenyans did when the British came to invade. You'd fight back. And it wouldn't be called terrorism, it would be called fighting for your land.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's the issue?
So my thing is, because we know now that technology is so advanced from when the Quran was written, then it's not as simple as soldiers running into your country and you having a punch-up with spears and swords and things of that nature.
Where does it say in the Quran you should blow yourself up? In fact, there's a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad. A hadith is a saying of the Prophet Muhammad. And whoever kills themselves, just generally speaking, suicide, that they will continually do that in the hellfire to themselves.
Okay, so why do these suicide bombers do that?
Where are they getting it from? They must be getting it from somewhere.
Some justification.
Yeah.
They get it from the Quran. How about that? They get it from the Quran. Let me tell you how they get it from the Quran.
Please.
Because this might sound like it sounds like a contradiction, but let me make it clear. They get it from the Quran because of those salespeople, which I call salespeople, who have marketed the Quran in a way which two groups of people have bought into. One of them are the Islamic haters, and the other one are the terrorists. The Islamic haters and the terrorists have the same understanding of the Quran. Both of those have the understanding that actually those verses which are talking about war, and clearly in the context, as we've seen of Surah At-Tawbah chapter 9 verse 1 to 5, is talking about international relations, nations, treaties, etc. Those salespeople, which I call salespeople, they've been able to manipulate the text using hermeneutical gymnastics and exegesis.
Can you tell me what the text is in English?
So, there's so many verses. There are so many verses in
that says you can blow yourself up.
No, there's nothing in the Quran that says
okay.
No, I'm saying in the Quran there are verses that says you can fight the enemy.
Okay.
The enemy, who is the enemy? Now, basically what I'm saying to you is the Islamic haters and the terrorists have the same understanding of who the enemy is.
Okay.
Who is actually any civilian. Any civilian. Why are they the enemy? The way they justify it is as follows. They say they've got democracy, and people, the general populace, they actually endorse the leaders. This is the way many of the salespeople they actually pitch it. They say that they endorse their leaders. Therefore, they are responsible for what their leaders, from a foreign policy perspective, say and do. So if their leaders, like in 2003, say, let's go to Iraq and kill 123,000 people, then they are responsible. That's how they justify it. So now they're able to shift the blame from the politician and the military complex to the general populace. And therefore, general populace blood becomes as, as easy to get as, for example, the military or the politician's blood. So all of them become the enemy, so to speak.
We've got a few people that want to call in. You can call in because we have literally got half an hour left. 07951 497 878. You can call in. You can speak to Mohammed. He'll answer your questions. We've got one guy who's just like, you're so smart, outstanding. Tell him. He's going in. He thinks you're right.
So do you think that there should be a modern day writing of the Quran? Because like you said, that there's certain things that are taken out of context.
See, post-colonial mentality kicking in.
But you see, all the things that you said.
Let me ask you a question.
No, let me ask you about post-colonialism. Let me speak. There's people that I meet, that when I speak to them about capitalism, communism, left, right, colonialism, they have the Scooby. They don't know what that is. It's not taught in the schools properly unless you want to study it in university. So when you have young, let's say, not even young, but when you have certain people that may go into prison and there's a brotherhood in prison that's going to protect them, they start reading the Quran. They don't have the ingenuity or the education behind it to be able to contextualize things. Then that's why I'm saying, should there be some sort of concordance or explanation next to these verses to state that this is what it actually means? However, if you read another verse, it can look like it's contradictory because...
Okay, so you're talking about interpretation.
Well, like how sometimes the Bible has got the...
But this is a lot of Muslims' argument with the Bible that there's too many versions.
Right. So, no. Exegesis is when scholars of the Quran or the Bible or any religious text, they interpret it in accordance with language, the lens that they're meant to accord, what you call the hermeneutical approach.
The hermeneutical approach.
Yeah, it's called the hermeneutical approach.
Okay.
So they use different tools to access the religious text. That's done everywhere. That's done within Islam, Christianity, Judaism.
To understand text.
To understand the text. So
okay,
individuals.
Can you say it once more?
It's called the hermeneutical approach.
And people that are studying the Quran for the first time should look at this when studying.
Absolutely, that's a good point. Exactly. So, in other words, when a young terrorist wannabe looks at the exegesis, and he realizes that the way he's interpreted the Quran is not in line with the classical interpretation from day one, from the first person to, according to my knowledge, to interpret the Quran in a full way is someone called Ibn Jarir al-Tabari in 310 AH. Then you have someone like Ibn Kathir, very famous tafsir or very famous exegesis that was written in 774 AH. And others, like, for example, As-Suyuti, who wrote it in 991. Anyways, or 911, which is actually funny because it's like 911. But that's when he died. And the point being is that the stuff is there. The scholars have done the work. All that needs to happen is that the young people that are persuaded, by the terroristic narrative, which is actually in many ways similar to the anti-Islamic narrative or the same, they should look at those things before making a judgment. And when they look at it properly, they will then see that actually what they've understood the Quran to be is different. It's disjointed from the way the classical scholars from day one have ever seen the Quran.
So how do you feel about this? Because we were just talking about it before, like this new trend of, it's cool to be Muslim. I know a lot of guys that they're Muslim, and then when it comes around to Ramadan, they're fasting, but they'll still be in the club, doing whatever. What do you think about this whole new wave of, it's cool to be a Muslim now?
Well, I think it is cool to be a Muslim. Let's be honest about it. Look, Islam is as follows. Let me just, for people that don't know and hearing me talk a lot of nonsense, like talk a lot of big words. I'm not trying to pontificate.
What do you do? What do you do? Sorry to interrupt.
Pardon?
What do you do?
I'm a teacher.
Okay, what do you teach?
History.
Oh. Okay, makes sense.
All right. Yeah. Okay, so basically what I was going to say was that I was saying I don't want to pontificate in a sesquipedaling way, which means I don't want to try and just talk and use big words and people don't know what I'm talking about. Going back to basics, Islam generally just means submission to God. We believe that God created the universe, He maintained the universe, He's the sustainer of all things, and that He sent messengers of all time to respective peoples and localities, to respective civilizations, to tell them of the message of God, which is to worship God, to believe in Him, and to submit to His will. That He sent Abraham and Moses and Jesus and Prophet Muhammad at the end, and He's the final prophet. So that's foundationally what Islam is. And two things that Islam comes with is that message, which is a very basic premise. Believe in worship of one God, not three in one, not the Trinity. We disassociate ourselves from the Trinity. And not an atheistic, obviously, narrative. But here we're talking about just believing in one ultimate entity, creator, that has fashioned you, is sustaining you and maintaining you in this universe, this cosmos, where we are a significant aspect of that cosmos, and worship and submit to that all-knowing entity. That's basically the Islamic narrative. We believe we have evidences to prove that this narrative is true. So two things come hand in hand, the message and the evidence base. And all of the prophets that have come to their respective peoples, they have come with two things. They've come with the message of Islam, which is to submit to the Creator, and they've also come with an evidence base, which is a range of rational evidences given to human beings to prove that the message is true. So Islam comes hand in hand, and some of those evidences are things like predictions of the future, things like the fact that the Quran, as you mentioned or alluded to before, is the only preserved ancient religious text. The things like the fact that you will not be able to find a contradiction in the Quran, the fact that the Quran is inimitable, in other words, it cannot be imitated, etc., etc. So from that perspective, we feel we have a rational, coherent worldview. We have a coherent epistemology and a coherent ontology. We don't need a Western post-colonial narrative to tell us basically what modernity should look like or what modernity is.
It's easy for you to say, though, coming from the point of, like I said, an educated point, where there's many generations here that they are westernized. However you want to dress it up, that due to schooling, due to maybe the watering down of how...
And by the way, I'm not against everything in the West. I'm just saying what I don't like...
Yeah, our thought process, you're saying, is coming from a very Western
you're
stance.
an African woman. Okay, well, whether you like it or not, you're an African woman.
Okay.
Your forefathers were Africans on the continent of Africa. Right? Your forefathers were Africans. White men came to your country and took over parts of your land. Yeah, that's what happened. Now you might think those days are done. Those days are not done. Those days are continual until this very day. There is a post-colonial reality. The way you dress, the way you talk, everything about you screams, I have been infiltrated and colonized once again, just like my forefathers were. The only difference is that your forefathers
So shouldn't we teach our young people anti-colonialism?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Your forefathers were colonized by men on ground with boots, whereas you guys are colonized, I'm sorry to say it like this, but with ideas. Yeah, ideologically you're colonized. You can't think outside of this box of modernity, Western discourse. Where is the African tribalism that you used to believe in?
Okay,
you know, Islam is the only religion in Africa which is actually the choice of the West African. And I'm going to say that quick. Islam is the only religion in Africa which is the choice of the West African. If you look at
but they used to, it wasn't religion with all of them. A lot of it was spiritualism, voodoo.
Yeah, I agree.
Practice,
but
and
I'm saying that Islam. If you look at the Mali Empire, the Songhai Empire, if you look at the Ghana Empire, all of these empires were Muslim empires and was the choice of the African. If we want to talk about what was the choice of the West African, non-colonized person, we're talking about Islam. That's what we're talking about.
Going back to what you said though,
not Christianity. Christianity was forced by missionaries.
Seeing as you're speaking on those things, let's set aside Islam for 1 second.
Yeah.
How do you teach young people coming up how to think void of Western
I'm not saying that they should
ideas?
Western ideas are very valuable. I don't want anyone to say of like.
But every single thing that I say, you're saying is coming from a Western view. So my thing is, there's nothing wrong with that to a degree.
Yeah.
But it's important if you're saying that our forefathers are African, that we should be able to switch and think.
I'm saying the truth is devoid of color. Like the truth is devoid of color, creed. What I'm saying is this: is that when we are told that the truth is the truth because the white man said so, the post-enlightenment experience says so, the post-colonial experience says so, that's when we have to take a step back and say, why is that the case? Why don't we do like what our forefathers did? Because our forefathers dared ask the question, why? That's what they did. Why do you think Mandela is Mandela? Why do you think Malcolm is Malcolm? Why do you think Martin is Martin? These three M's are the way they are because they asked why. And then they said no. When they realized that the answer was not satisfactory. They asked why, and then when they're not convinced with the answer, then they said no. That's what made these people successful. That's what we have to do. But what I'm not saying is let's throw the baby with the bathwater. I'm not saying let's take away, all of the Western accomplishment because let's be frank, Western technological progress is better than the majority of the world. Western scientific progress is better than but it's been inherited by the Arab tradition or by the Chinese tradition or by the African tradition, and it's been built upon. But we need that. We can take it. That's a good thing. There are lots of things like in the world that we live in, the Western world we live in, anti-racism, kind of the inclusivity, tolerance. I like that stuff. I'm not saying let's throw that part away. What I'm saying is that the meta-narrative that the Western man has forced us to engage with. That we should question.
We're still having